Hello, welcome to Beach View, our podcast about all sorts of things and or stuff.
Yes, and today we're doing another current viewings.
That's right, you know we love a good current viewings. Mine usually involves books. Yours usually involves video games.
Yeah, sometimes TV. We both sometimes do TV.
Yeah, it's both TV, exactly. So, what have you been getting into these days?
Yeah, so recently I have been playing Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh,
Have you heard of this?
never heard of it.
Okay, so it is one of the most popular games from last year.
Oh.
And yeah, I finally decided to get into it. And there's some context behind this.
Okay.
Baldur's Gate is a series that's like influential in the RPG genre. It's like one of the like more popular examples of the genre back in the day, and it kind of like set the template in a lot of ways, at least as far as I know. I'm not like too well read on old RPG stuff. But the company that made it, by the way, is the same company that made the Star Wars game I talked about in our last current viewings, if you remember that.
I do.
So yeah. So they made 1 and 2 back in 98 and 2000. So, back in the day. And these were like direct adaptations of Dungeons and Dragons, which I assume you're familiar with.
Yes. So I'm familiar with Dungeons and Dragons in that I have heard of it, understand it's like a role-playing game, but that is like the extent of my knowledge.
Yeah, this is basically all you need to know. It's a tabletop RPG as opposed to these games, which are computer RPGs, and these, like the Baldur's Gate series, was like a direct adaptation of Dungeons and Dragons, which I believe was the most popular game at the time. Tabletop game. It certainly is now.
Yeah.
But like basically this whole genre was like attempts to make computerized versions of tabletop games. And like eventually it started building on that with like not directly versions of tabletop games, but like taking the same mechanics and sort of like taking what was learned from previous attempts and focusing more on like the computer aspect. But yeah, so Baldur's Gate 3 comes out. I think it had a period of early access, which is where the developer releases like an early version of it for people to play if they want to like get it in before the full experience comes out.
Oh.
But it fully released last year, and it was like really popular, like a hugely successful game, sold a bunch, was very culturally relevant, and it is also like basically like the old Baldur's Gate, a attempt to directly adapt the systems from Dungeons and Dragons, but it's by a different company this time. So rather than like the old company that did it, they took a new one that like for almost a decade now I think has been making more like throwback RPGs, because these are like overhead like click to move style games like the old ones were. At some point they started moving into like more first person sort of deals, and like a lot of like more other genres got mixed in there, like particularly shooters and stuff. And this company Larian's been making like throwback games, and I think their like innovation is to do turn-based rather than real-time with pause, which is what it sounds like. It's like everything moves in real time, and then you can like pause it to like strategize. This is like pure turn-based instead, where you and the enemy take turns. And yeah, so it's like their system's doing it. And that's a bunch of context to give. I don't know how much you care about that, but that's like sort of where this is coming from.
I got you.
Yeah, and it's become like the luminary for RPGs now, I guess. And I don't really like it.
You don't? Okay.
Yeah, like despite like all the popularity and stuff, for one, like I don't know how I've been able to play this game, because it is the old school like click to move style game that like just for whatever reason, every other time I've tried to play this style of game, I just could not get into it. The clicking to move is just such an impediment to me. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
It just makes like the act of moving around exhausting to me. But for whatever reason, I've been able to stick to this one thus far. But it's still not a fun experience to me.
Okay. You don't like it.
there's that. I don't think I like the Dungeons and Dragons setting. And they just like kind of throw you into the deep end with this and like basically expect you to have some prior knowledge about it. And
Okay.
I didn't, so just kind of like, okay. Like, there's some things that work if you don't know, but there's quite a few things where I feel like you're really supposed to know what you're doing already.
Okay, I got
And know,
you.
like, everything about, like, the story and the setting and stuff. And that's kind of, like, off-putting. I don't care for the character writing so far, which is, like, a huge, point to most of these, like, modern-day RPGs, is that they have, like, very specific characters that you travel around with, and like that's like the highlight is these characters and their stories, this like little side quest you can do. And I'm still fairly early on in the game, so maybe this will change, but I haven't liked that so far. I don't know, I haven't liked the quests and dialogue, and the worst part is the combat, which is just, because it's turn-based, like utterly exhausting to me. Like, it just, everything takes forever. And it's not just like I don't know how much you know about like JRPG typical turn-based stuff.
I know nothing.
Okay, so usually in those you like have a little dialogue box that pops up and you can like select a move. This, you are like clicking to maneuver your character around in like a tactical scenario, and like, so anytime there's a big battle, like every character has to go through and move before you're allowed to move again, and they take
Oh.
forever. Sometimes the AI takes forever to like make a decision, and so you're just like sitting there like, just okay. We get back to when I get to move, and it's all like really slow. There's been several, like, this is a common video game thing to like hit a point where you need to reload several times in
Yeah.
order to like do the thing right. So it's like, I know I can beat this, I just need to like execute right and maybe get a little lucky. The problem is that like doing that takes forever because of how long like turns in this take. And it's
Oh.
just like, I don't know. And there's all these like fiddly bits, which I take it is like Larian's like their thing is they have a lot of like, like you can put water on the ground and have like different effects happen to that. Like, for example, you can freeze the water and have a slick surface, or you can put oil on the ground and set it on fire. There's all these like environmental effects, and it like height's a big factor. So if you have the high ground, or you can like push people off of places, and so there's all these like fiddly things that I feel like most of the time it's just better to try to raw damage your way out of fights. Like,
Oh.
maybe I'm just wrong about that and I'm playing the game wrong, but I feel like most of the time it is just better to not waste moves and to try to like just out damage the opponent, because otherwise I'll start losing characters.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just playing it wrong, but between that and like it being so slow, I just like, and also because this is a tabletop game, there are so many different like choices to that you can like choose when you're leveling up and stuff. Like, I feel like most RPGs for computers have gotten pretty good about streamlining that, so you're not like overwhelmed by choice, and like that's like been an issue, because I feel like with a tabletop game, there's like really free form, and like you're going to be consistently doing it, and it's like a thing you create with other people, so you want all those like options so you can like really like use your imagination with it, or like you're going to be with this for a long time, so it makes sense to like really pour over stuff, really have a lot of options. But with a game, like, you have the runtime of the game and that's it. So I feel like giving you all these options is just really superfluous, and you're
Okay.
also limited in like, the raw concrete system that was programmed in. So there's just a lot of things that I feel like other games have eventually like learned to smooth out, or design specifically for computers, and not like try to adapt directly a tabletop game
Okay.
like that. Just all of these things come together, and I don't really like the game.
Oh, well, that's a bummer.
Despite it being, like, again, one of the most popular games from last year. So,
But you're still playing it.
yep, well, just trying to see what everybody else saw in it.
I got you. Well, are there any redeeming qualities?
Yeah, so far there's been one character I like. but for like external reasons, basically. It's
Okay.
like a type of story arc that I like, at least what I've seen from it being set up so far. And I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's anything else redeeming. There's like I don't know. There's like a lot of extra stuff, but like in a way that like this isn't like a lot of games have little extra things you can go search around for, but it's like
Yeah.
usually that's a positive. I wouldn't sit here complain about it if I actually liked this game. So,
Oh no.
uh, yeah, I don't know.
Well,
I guess conceptually it's cool that you get to make a lot of different choices, and those are like seem to be pretty well reflected in the game, which is a lot of work, and it's like a credit to be able to pull that off. Like usually people really like that in RPGs. Because again, it's a lot of work. So some studios just kind of go for like you get a few choices in like dialogue and story, and this seems to have like a pretty wide array of what you can and can't do, and like how your character build affects things. So,
I
but
got you.
I have seen games where that exists, and I still think they're bad. So that is not like that's conceptually cool, not a saving grace in my mind.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't know. Just eh.
Yeah.
Going into it, I expected to like it more. Like I expected to be put off a bit by the turn-based combat because that's usually not my thing. But
Yeah.
I expected to like the like characters and dialogue more. I think it's just like a combination of the writing feels kind of like video game perfunctory mixed with a little bit of like a CW show, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah. That's kind of funny.
Which, like, I don't hate CW shows. Like, I could get with that. It's just, I don't, for whatever reason, I'm not feeling it here. Like, I feel like the tone of the game otherwise is such a, like, serious fantasy thing that when it
Okay.
does move into that, like, CW-ish character beats, I'm kind of like, eh. I mean, maybe I'm just early on and this is just sort of like how they introduce characters, and, like, later
Yeah.
on it gets into more depth. But yeah, I don't know. This like kind of put me off. Like I don't really like I see why because it was written this way. Like people like just fell in love with these characters.
Yeah.
But that's not something that like I particularly care about. And yeah, I don't know. I guess that plus it being like me not really liking the D&D setting from what I've seen so far, and it throwing you in the deep end with that. So, like, I don't really have a good grasp on it.
So you're just not that into it.
No.
I get that.
Yeah.
I mean, at least you tried it. So what made you want to get into it this year if it was like really popular last year?
I don't know. Sometimes you just take a while to get into things.
Yeah.
You know how it is. Like, sometimes something will be popular for months and you'll be like, I'll check that out eventually. And then
Yeah.
eventually happens.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, good.
But I don't like this game.
Oh, well.
Yep, I am condemned to kind of dislike popular things, I suppose. I feel like that's usually what happens with these sorts of things. It's either
Yeah.
that or I'm like, it's decent, but it's not what everybody was saying it was.
I
I
got
feel
you.
like that's like basically my only two responses to popular things.
Well, and we kind of have this like expectation, like when things get really popular, then you have like the expectation that like, oh, it's gonna be good. And then
Well,
it's
it's not
not.
just that it was popular, it's that it was popular and everybody was praising it. Like, everybody's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is so good. This is one of the best games of all time. Like, game of the year, all that stuff.
Yeah. So you're thinking it's gonna be like, better than what it ended up being.
Yeah, at least in my experience so far. I don't know. Maybe it gets better as I get later on.
I don't know. I somehow doubt that.
It's possible.
Yeah, it's possible, but I don't know. Well, that's fun. At least you tried it.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, maybe next time. Maybe you'll find one that you like more.
Yep. Maybe next time I'll like the popular thing.
Doubt it.
Hey, I liked The Wire when I watched it. Well, that's not popular, but that is like very highly praised. So, and
Okay.
I was like, that is exactly as good as people say it is. So, there's at least one thing.
There's one thing that you liked. Okay. That's good.
That come on here and talk about things I like all the time.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's very
The
true.
last game I talked about on here, I liked.
You did
The
like
last
it.
album we talked about on here, I liked.
That's true, and I liked it too. Look at that.
So, yep. Anyways, that's my current viewing.
Love that. Okay, well, shall we get into mine, or do you have anything to add?
Oh, hold on. I thought of one positive.
Oh,
This
go
game
ahead.
has a die system, which some RPGs, if I remember correctly, had that in the past, but that's not like something that usually happens. So you can change the color of all your little outfits, which is neat.
Oh, that's cool.
Your like armors and wizard robes and stuff, or your funny hats that you can pick up off the ground and wear.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So I like it when games have that
Good.
little customization features. Yeah, so I think I'm done then now.
Okay,
Finally thought of
well,
another good thing to say.
yeah, you have a positive. That's awesome. Well, let's see. I can get into mine. So, I've read a couple of books, a couple that I enjoyed, and so I also have like a TV show that I've been watching too. But for now, I'm going to talk about a memoir that I just read, and it was Britney Spears' memoir, "The Woman in Me." So I was interested to read this because I'm a big Britney fan. Her story I was interested in reading because of like her, I guess, tumultuous years being under a conservatorship. So I kind of wanted to see what her, her point of view was from that. And she gets a lot of flack like on social media for like the stuff that she posts on Instagram. She always does these like dancing videos and stuff. And I always feel kind of bad for her because she's just trying to do her own thing, She obviously, she talks about her mental health issues and stuff like that. But also, really, one of the reasons why I always liked her is because she's from Louisiana. So she's from Kentwood, which everybody knows. And she like single-handedly put Kentwood on the map because it's this little bitty place in Louisiana. So that just interested me. So I gave it a read, got it from the library, and I enjoyed it. Like I thought it was kind of rambling at first, but then once we kind of get into it and you read her story, it's like, oh, this poor thing. So, I mean, she doesn't come across as like a victim or anything, but it's just an interesting read. So I'll kind of get into that. So we know it's been highly publicized that she was in a 13-year conservatorship that was basically governed by her dad, which she has a lot to say about her dad in this book. So her dad's name is James Spears, and I guess I don't need to introduce who Britney Spears is because I feel like everybody knows who she is, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Britney Spears had this long celebrity career as a performer and singer. Anyway, so she goes into like her younger years. She was on like the Mickey Mouse Club with people like Christina Aguilera and Justin Timberlake. She talks about, how she kind of got discovered. Like she appeared when she was like 10 years old on Star Search, which was this like old TV show. I used to watch it when I was little, where, it's basically like a talent search kind of show like they have now, still just in a different way. So she had humble beginnings. Her family was really poor, and she was basically, she says she's the one who like basically provided for her family. Her dad was an alcoholic, and she kind of goes into like her parents' situation and with her sister and brother and all that kind of stuff. So she talks about like her rise to fame. Her very first solo in singing was she sang A Christmas Carol at her mother had this like local daycare, and then she auditioned for a few things. She, basically had like after the Mickey Mouse Club, she had like a normal life back in Kentwood. And, they got like an agent and like a lawyer and stuff like that. And so she got her first record deal at 15 years old. And she was a teenager, like performing, like she would perform in malls. And she was 16 when she recorded Baby One More Time, which was like her first like hit single, I think. And she ended up going on tour with NSYNC, which was a boy band that was super popular. And then she had this really high profile romance with Justin Timberlake. So she, again, she knew Justin Timberlake since they were kids. They dated for 3 years. They lived together in Miami, and like they both were like super popular at the time. So they were always like touring and different stuff like that. Anyways, so she goes through like all the, kind of talk about her and Justin Timberlake. It was like a really meaningful relationship to her, but he had like cheated on her and she knew about it. And anyway, it was like this whole thing. She talks about like how she actually had gotten pregnant when she was with him. And anyway, it's just this whole story. She kind of goes through her like mental breakdown, 2007, and why she shaved her head at a hair salon and hit a paparazzo's car with an umbrella. That was like the major things. Like people still talk about that, like how they say like she went crazy. But she basically had like a psychotic break and was institutionalized, was under this conservatorship. She like couldn't see her kids. Like it was like this whole thing. So she had 2 kids with Kevin Federline, and like she talks about how he kept her kids away from her. It was like this whole thing. So super interesting read.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, that conservatorship was basically like them trying to like make as much money off of her, like,
Yes.
Name as possible.
Yes, and so you never know like whose account is credible because she's so discredited like by her family and by different people because of her mental health issues. But in reading, and we know now that like that conservatorship, she finally was able to get a new lawyer. She said she didn't know she could even get a different lawyer than the court appointed one. And they dissolved that conservatorship because they found it to be, like it wasn't right what her family was doing to her. And I was definitely on the Free Britney bandwagon because I was like, nobody should be that controlled. Like, that is just, I think like it's almost like she was non-human, like they were making her do all these performances, like when she really didn't want to. She had a residency in Las Vegas for I think like 4 years. And she said she would perform the same songs like 3 times a week for 4 weeks at a time. And then she'd have like 4 weeks off and then 4 weeks back. And she said she wanted to have like creative license to change up the music, like do some remixes and like whatever. And like they absolutely would not let her, like her dad, she says her dad controlled what she performed, what she ate. She couldn't drive, like all these different things. Like she was under so much control. But reading it from her point of view, I mean, you can obviously see, and she talks about her mental health issues. But my big takeaway from this was a girl who was pushed into stardom at such a young age. And her, I guess, personalities, her propensity to people please, her not really having any control. Like she was just broken down, like year after year after year by her family. The paparazzi were just completely just out of control during that time. I'm talking to like late 90s, early 2000s. By journalists. She puts in her book some quotes from like a journalist doing interviews on her, like people like Diane Sawyer, Oprah, etc. And the things that these people would ask her about her, like sexuality, about people saying she's a bad mother. Ryan Seacrest was another one. People saying she's a bad mother, that she's unfit to be a mother, like like all this stuff. Like you can totally see how somebody who wasn't mentally guarded against this could totally just break down. Like I definitely have so much compassion for her situation. Because I remember, I mean, like I think she's like a year older than me. Like I grew up in high school, like seeing her rise to stardom, and people were relentless back then. And it's a terrible situation. So, do you know anything about all of this?
Yeah, so I remember this was like relatively popular on Twitter, like the situation with the conservatorship specifically, like especially when she was trying to
Yes.
like fight it and that like whole
Yes.
legal case. And I remember people were seemed to have positive opinions about the memoir when it came out, although I didn't see
Yes.
too much about it. So I
Yeah,
just know it
there
was
wasn't
talked
a
about.
ton. Yeah, they really, I think most of the stuff that I've seen online about the memoir were about like the things she said about Justin Timberlake
I
or
saw a
like
few
the,
of that.
yes, like, and I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm like, I totally am on her side with this. Like,
Oh, I saw one that was like from the book of like someone from InSync being embarrassing, like
yeah,
while she was hanging out with them.
Justin Timberlake. Yeah, like she talks about how like he would like kind of change his how do you say that? I guess his like dialect and his like he would basically code switch like when he saw like a black celebrity and stuff like that. Or like she talked about how when she was like losing her baby that she was pregnant with him, like she was like on the floor in pain, and he was like he thought music would help, so he's like strumming his guitar. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like I understand they were like really young back then, but if a man was trying to strum his guitar to make me feel better while I was losing a child, I would just like absolutely, that's completely ridiculous to me. Like I'm like, get out of here. You should be taking me to a hospital to get this under control, not strumming music on the bathroom floor. I'm sorry. But again, they were really, really young. You got to take that, you got to have that caveat. Like when you're that young, you don't really know how to deal with situations a lot of times. Anyways, but that's just one little part of like the things that Justin said and did. And we all know, well, I don't know about like younger people, but I know about they made music, like Justin did a music video in the early 2000s that was supposedly about Britney Spears, and like they had an actor in the video that looked just like her or like similar to her. So I mean it was obvious that like he was kind of like victim shaming kind of thing to her. So just the stuff that she outlines in the book, the money that her father was making from her conservatorship was outrageous. The lawyers involved, the manager, like all these people, she did not have people around her that were looking out for her best interest. That is very obvious to anybody. And I think that would have made all the difference. If she had good people around her, I think she could have been counseled to make different decisions. Well, and she didn't even have any right to make decisions. So it was just so crazy. But I love how she talks about the Free Britney movement. And she said she was actually in an institution. It was basically a rehab, but she was institutionalized like against her will. And one of the nurses like showed her for the first time like online like the hashtag Free Britney, and like people, her fans, like protesting and like wearing like hashtag Free Britney shirts and stuff like that. And she said she's so grateful like for that movement because she felt like she actually had support. So that was super interesting. Her talking about recording. She said she got to the point where she felt as if her dad and her family like made her perform, and her heart wasn't in it anymore, and she didn't think that was fair for her or the fans, and she just didn't want to be performing because she didn't have any say so in it, any creative license whatsoever. And so she said she just like got away from music. She didn't want to do any music anymore. Well, recently, I think it was in 2020, I'm not positive, that she did a collaboration with Elton John. And that was the first time she recorded music in like several years. And Actually, it might have been, I think might have been like 2022. It was more recent than that. But anyway, so she said Elton John was like one of her musical heroes. And so she was inspired enough to do it with him. And of course, it became very popular. So that was super cool. Will she get back to music? We don't know. But this girl has certainly been through so much. And I feel, like I said, a lot of compassion for her situation. So it was a good read. I enjoyed it. At first, I was like, I don't know about this. Like I said, it was kind of rambly. But then, like, as she got into the stuff that, like, I remember from when I was a teenager, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember that. Like, that poor thing. So that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything to say about that?
Yeah, well, I'll reiterate, I've heard good things about it, but, not too much, and I don't read a lot of books, so it's not something I read myself, so, but, it's interesting hearing about it.
Yeah, and I don't really like nonfiction, just because it kind of bores me. Like, I need a story, But I have read a couple of memoirs recently, and I think I mentioned before on here that I read Paris Hilton's memoir a while back when that came out. And she said, the same exact thing. And she and Brittany were friends. And Brittany does talk about Paris's support in this book too. But Paris's account of the paparazzi and the journalists during that time is the same exact thing that Brittany was saying. Same thing that like Lindsay Lohan, all the really women who were coming up into fame during that time, they were really done dirty by the media. I mean, they really were. I remember listening to interviews and being like, I can't believe they asked him that. Like, that is such a personal and intrusive question that you would never ask a male, So I think that, knowing how it was back then and seeing what these people have been through, they're very strong to get through that. I mean, you have people who are, like Brittany says in the book, good at being famous, that I think are probably mentally strong, have a lot of people that they trust around them. Brittany did not. And so that poor thing, she was just, like I said, broken down time after time. So I totally get where she's coming from. And if she wants to post videos of her twirling and dancing in her own home all day and people just think she's like, they say she's crazy, like, let her do her thing. Like, it's not bothering you. Who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a good read. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
All in all, super interesting read. I would recommend it. I always wonder with memoirs if it's a ghostwriter.
Yeah, that's probably a safe bet.
But, I mean, it definitely seems like her, her voice, so...
Well, a good ghostwriter can really capture that,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I think that is interesting. And as somebody whose profession is communication, I always am interested in like ghostwriter topic. Like, I think that's a cool, I love doing that. Like when I do stuff like that for work or for other people, whether it's like I'm writing them like talking points for something, like that's my favorite part, is like getting into their voice and figuring out how they would phrase something or what they would talk about as being important. So I don't know, that's why I like memoirs too, because I'm like, it's a ghostwriter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's I guess I don't need to do another one. But that was my current viewing, and I have lots of other books and stuff I could talk about, but we'll leave it at that for now.
Yep. So yeah, that's been our current viewings. If there's nothing else, I guess I'll take us out.
All right.
All right, well, this has been Beach View. Thanks for listening, and tune in next time. Bye.